just one word is that build what you believe that you can use yourself. I think if that feeling comes that I'm building a flat, an apartment that I can come and stay in, I'm building a road that I can drive my car on. If you can do that as a developer, India will be a different country.
So today we have with us Mr. Tanmoy Chakrabarty, who is one of the ex-senior Tata executives, Tata Sons executives, who was heading the government liaison from Delhi office. And I am very much honored and privileged to have you over here in this show. And the basic objective of this interview is to talk about the way forward for the handing over of projects on time with world-class quality. As I know you from my Tata background, as you know me, I was working with Tatas, and I have 30 years of experience put together in the project management and construction management in India and the Middle East. So over these 30 years of my experience, what I have realized that in India, 85 to 90% of the projects are not being able to be delivered on time and world-class quality. So now, given the fact that government is coming up with lot many projects with lakhs of crores of rupees, who is going to handle the projects? How we are going to handle the projects? It's a big question. Because personally, I have worked with the global companies. I have seen the global perspective of it. However, in the Indian context, our Indian companies, although few companies are trying to come up to world standards, but we're way behind the world standards. So my question to you is, since you have been listening with the top government authorities, whether it is government of India, whether it is government of state government authorities, how do you see the roadblock and and the approval process in terms of land acquisition, environmental clearance, utilities diversion, traffic diversion, municipality development approvals, fire approval, radar approval? So
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you for having me this morning. It's a pleasure to speak to you. We've had an opportunity to work together briefly during your days at Tata Realty and my days at Tata Sons. But I will speak more from the context of my experience at TCS, where I used to head the government business for 14 years, 2004 to 2018. And I had the privilege of leading some of the transformational programs that we delivered to governments, both central as well as state and municipal. And clearly, I think there is a big push. Of course, the national infrastructure pipeline that has been set up, and clearly the deficiencies of infrastructure has been rightly realized by the leadership in the country, and there is, of course, the big push. But when you look at the practicalities and some of the experiences of large implementations of programs, you find that, very often the end outcomes are not very clear and they are fuzzy when a program is embarked upon. And what happens as a part of this lack of clarity of the end outcomes is that there is a lot of fine tuning that happens during the course of the implementation of projects. Now, that leads to a lot of rework, delays, cost overruns, and of course, leading to very, very diluted outcomes. I will take, for example, one big project in the outskirts of Delhi called the Dwarka Expressway. Now, Dwarka Expressway was supposed to be a game changer, on the promise of which a lot of real estate development happened on both sides of the proposed Dwarka Expressway, and huge amounts of money by builders was invested in making the new, let's say, diplomatic enclave on the sides of the Dwarka Expressway. Many condominiums were set up. But unfortunately, the Dwarka Expressway, which was supposed to be the main feeder four or six lane kind of a road track got bogged down because whilst 90% of the land was acquired, there was 10% which went into litigation and courts. And the Dwarka Expressway, as a result of that, got delayed by over 4 to 5 years. Now, imagine the kind of investments that have taken place by the real estate developers, the kind of commitments that customers have made in blocking their money in buying those real estate in anticipation of the fact that that area would be 10 minutes connectivity to the new Indira Gandhi International Airport in Delhi. And ultimately, what happens is that the buildings are up, the real estate development is completed, but the road is not delivered yet. So you can imagine the kind of colossal loss of idle inventory, the interest on the EMIs that people are paying, and yet they are not getting the delivery of the real estate because there is no access to those condominiums and the road is yet to be completed. So I think is a classic example of how a project needs to be fully conceived. The land acquisition needs to be almost 99% done even before you embark upon the execution of the project, because the execution of the project happens in a natural flow. There has to be cash flow, there has to be the project plan executed. But if you get stuck somewhere in between, and it is basically a stretch of not more than half a kilometer that is under litigation, and half a kilometer is basically blocking about 20-30 kilometers on both sides of the highway and not allowing the result to be enjoyed by the people. There's a large ecosystem of buyers of apartments there who are all stuck. And I'm sure such is the case in several other parts of the country as well. So I think the NHAI, for example, in this case, who has taken over the project, has now made changes in their own project execution plans where they say when the land acquisition is more than 90% complete, that is the time when they will sign the work order for an execution of a road contract, etc. These are all coming out of lessons learned from past experiences. So clearly there is a big push, 1 lakh crore to be spent in India on infrastructure, and clearly there is a need for urban infrastructure, for example, to be focused on, because 50% of the Indian population will be urbanized by 2030. And we don't have any greenfield cities that are coming up in India. We are going to depend on the old traditional cities to expand their city limits to be able to absorb this kind of an influx that's going to come in. And therefore, we have to focus on large waterworks projects, sewage projects, road expansion projects to be able to solve the transportational challenges and all of the other urban challenges that are going to hit India in times to come.
Correct. I think you have been right in pointing out the way that Noida Expressway has been, Delhi to Agra, that expressway has been blocked. But as you can see in other projects also, and the primary investor is the government in most of the projects in India at the moment.
Yes.
And if you see there, this is one particular stretch wherein the litigation of the land came in, but then other projects where land acquisition is done, everything is clear. There also we have issues pertaining to like giving the job to a L1 contractor. I mean, most of the cases it is also felt that the client themselves has not worked out properly and they are not aware of the actual cost of the project. Having said that, so how can one appoint a L1 contract just because it is L1? The feasibility, viability, it is not being checked and they are put on the job. And as a result, it goes to litigation again. I mean, this is number one issue of contract to L1, concept of L1. Then there is no relationship between the contractor, client, and the consultant. There is a tussle going on always. The reason I can see the contract document which is formulated, that itself is wrong. It is one-sided. How can we, work on a project worth lakhs of crores of rupees, having a tender document one-sided. Any client, whether it is government, whether it is semi-government, whether it is private, you cannot end of the day put the contractor's entire responsibility. No way. Nowhere across the globe, I mean, all the developed countries, even in the Middle East, the top companies where they are working, unless otherwise there is a relationship established. Because contractors are onboarded just to finish the job. They are as a partners. They are supposed to be treated as partners. But in our case, we take them for granted, starting with L1, and that's how the staffs are also recruited. L1, no quality. I mean, from my perspective, what I see, there are three issues basically. One is the mindset, second is the skill set, third is the tool set. And that's what I have perceived a course, mentorship course for the senior management across the industry, which in India has not started basically. I am the one who has started in the civil engineering. It is there in the America since 1950s. So I think I'll be able to help. But then the problem remains is L1 contract, giving the job to a L1 contract. And there are two primary issues. As long as the clients are able to give decisions and on-time payment, contractors will be working. They are on board just to work. Clients are not giving decisions just to save his skin or save his chair. I don't know what it is. Many people talk many different ways, including the government, semi-government, and the private sectors. When the decision comes to financial matters, there are very few leaders who are actually able to take the decision, which eventually causes lot of delays. What you have to say about this particular topic?
No, I think you have raised some very pertinent practical eventualities that are today encountering live projects in the country. For example, this whole business of L1. I always say that when you throw peanuts, you're only going to get monkeys.
Mm.
L1 necessarily is not the only criteria that India should follow. In fact, India should move towards the World Bank model of the two-part bid system QCBS 80-20 principle, where 80% is focused and we given weightage on the capabilities and the past credentials of the vendor to have executed projects, and 20% should be only focused on commercials. It is always established fact in India that the cheapest available alternative vendor does not necessarily deliver the best possible outcomes. So therefore, I think India needs to mature towards the 80-20 QCBS methodology as the first instance. Secondly, as a country, we have been tolerating mediocrity in delivery. Roads are built, roads get washed away, they are full of potholes, there is no accountability of the vendor, there is no ongoing existing O&M contracts to the contractors so that they remain accountable for what they have delivered for a period of time. This also helps in the contractors having a long term and meaningful relationship and held on account of the service level agreements that actually need to be constructed, and there is no relationship between what the consultant has conceived in terms of the DPR and the project, and they are not accountable for the outcome. So they do the consulting at a 60,000 feet level and go away, and then the contractor comes on the ground and sees all the practical difficulties, but the consultant has no accountability. So I think some of these things need to be really improved, and it can indeed be done. As you correctly said, the mindset has to change. The mindset of appointing a vendor instead of a partner, that needs to come in any relationship. After all, a contract ought to be a fair agreement by and between two parties. That's the essence of a contract. But in reality, what happens is that the moment the contract is drawn by the government and given to the vendor, the vendor is given the impression that now it is all your responsibility and you are accountable for everything. It takes two hands to clap, and therefore I think the government's ongoing participation in a given project is very, very essential. The regular governance of a program is very important, where regular steering committees that need to be set up for every project needs to meet. They need to discuss issues that are encountered by the contractor. where the government has to take timely decisions to resolve those issues, and the governance of the program or a project needs to happen in a very, very structured manner. So all these things are very, very important inputs that need to come in as we as a country focus on improving our infrastructure. And indeed it is improving, but we are getting a lot of bumps on the way, and a lot of cost is overrun as a result of us ignoring some of these basic fundamentals of program governance. There needs to be a concept of a program management office that needs to come in for every project, where after the signing of the contract with the vendor, there is an overall oversight which involves the contractor representatives, the government, as well as maybe a third party intermediary who is assigned by the government to look at the technical aspects of delivery, because very often the government does not have the capability within itself to be able to ascertain whether what they have ordered is what they are getting delivered by the partners. So I think in a structure, a three-way structure like this, programs can be executed successfully on time, within budget. And you talked and raised a very important facet of sign-offs. Sign-offs are very, very important on time. Otherwise, they lead to project overruns, cost overruns, and that ultimately hits the vendor. And that is when the vendor or the partners tries to resort to shortcuts, and that again compromises the quality of the delivery. So everything has a cascading impact of ultimately ensuring that whether the project is successfully delivered or not successfully delivered, all of these interim facets need to be put into consideration, and a very, very structured professional approach needs to be taken for program delivery in the country.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you have been very rightly putting in the perspective. Having said that, I have had the opportunity to work with one gentleman called Mr. E. Sridharan, who was given the responsibility of the Delhi Metro back in the days 1997, wherein he conceptualized the project, and I had the opportunity to work with him during the year 2001 to 2003. And that project under his leadership, prior to that project, Delhi, there was no project handed over on time. And this was a project, in fact, the technology itself was new. So everything was brought in from the developed part of the world. So consultancy, contracting, everything was Europeans, and the Japanese collaboration, of course. It was funded by Japan. If 20 years back, a person can deliver a project on time with world-class quality, why not today? Because I can see, if you were in Delhi at that point in time, you remember the way the arrangements were made for the Delhi Metro, the underground metro, which was first in India, which is one of the most complicated projects. And I have been part of the project. Vishwavidyalaya station, I was the station manager. So I have seen it, I have executed it. Things can be done. If, men like Sridharan can deliver 20 years back, why not today? And the most unfortunate part is, I recently had been to one of the big projects in Delhi, which is Ahmedabad to Mumbai, that high-speed rail.
High-speed rail, yes.
Yeah, wherein some of my colleagues were working. So I was just talking to them. The Delhi Metro projects, which is still under execution, what I see today, is something around 20% of what we delivered 20 years before. Wherein still it is being perceived as one of the, good delivered projects, because they still hire the, when it comes to the project manager, they are recruiting somebody Westerner with Western experience. So, somebody has set an example, everything is there. Same project, when the leadership changes, we fall so much below. And there are people who can deliver. So, I think the essence of the time is, what do you think? As I said, as I see, there are two issues: mindset, because the top management, irrespective of government, semi-government, and the private, the decision makers, they feel that they know, and what they know is sufficient. They know everything. They don't want to bow down. Sort of ego, that because of that ego problem, 60% of the problem lies there, according to me. I mean, correct me if I am wrong. Second thing comes to the skill part of it. The engineers we have, the civil, mechanical, electrical engineers across the country, lacks in skill set. Although everybody carries a degree certificate, master degree, in terms of the global standards, we are not even 5%. And that's the data given by Sridhar. It is not my data, but I agree with it because I have walked across. And third is the tool set. Still, we are, using the tool sets which are 20 years back. I mean, on the other hand, same Indians are working and delivering, is able to deliver in Middle East. I worked in Dubai for 10 years. Entire Middle East has been developed by mostly by the Indians, 75% engineers, supervisors, workers. But same Indians, why not in India? There is a big leadership issue. So, this mentorship program for the, mindset part of it. By the way, the mindset is never ever taught in any of the universities across the world. This is a concept developed by a few Americans in the early 1950s, and because of which, in today's world, there are 220 billionaires, out of which 80% are school dropout. Be it, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Dhirubhai Ambani. So how they are able to run such a big conglomerate despite not being having the so-called fancy degrees? So we must think about it, and I think the right way forward is to catch hold of the top management and work with them in explaining them and talking about the mindset part of it. Second is improving the skill set for our engineers. We need to devise a system. I already devised, and accordingly the tool set part of it. So what you have to say about it?
No, I think Mr. E. Sridharan is a legend in his own lifetime, and what he has done, and he always carried a resignation letter in his pocket. That's what I heard. That he would never take any nonsense from any government official or politician or whatever. I think India will do well by having maybe under your program, Mr. E. Sridharan coming and mentoring the project managers of today of large infrastructural projects in India. He has so much practical experience that he can share, which can be so beneficial for many of the project managers of today as to how to execute on time, within budget, and most importantly, of a quality that is sustainable.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the most important uh, difference and the dichotomy in India is that it is the same engineers, as you say, who go and deliver world-class infrastructure in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Doha. And here we compromise on the quality because we can get away with it. So the key change that needs to come is the environment or the ambience of project delivery in India, where the government or whoever is the customer will not take and not accept anything below excellence as delivery. Mediocrity should be eliminated in project delivery. And chalta hai, kuch baad mein kar denge. When I go to see some of the other metros around the country, I can already see some little, dips in the road surface around the pillars of the metro. So that clearly gives me an indication that not enough uh, focus was made on really strengthening the base of the pillars that have been constructed, and it is only a matter of time before repair work has to start on the pillar foundations of those metros. So why have we accepted such a compromised, mediocre delivery? I think we have to get out of the mindset that if we can build world-class infrastructure for countries around the world, so can we do it for our own country, for our own benefit. So the mahal of service delivery excellence and no compromise on quality needs to come into every contractual engagement in the country. It is only then that we will be able to see world-class infrastructure, which I am absolutely confident can easily be delivered in India. But we have to change the mahal, where compromise is accepted. Sometimes even for some corrupt practices, compromises are accepted, but ultimately it all bounces back over time when such infrastructure collapses?
Yeah, thank you for the inputs. Now, given the fact that we are heading for a third largest economy in the world, we are already fifth largest. We are a $3 trillion economy. Maybe within next 2 to 3 years, very soon we will be $5 trillion economy, and hence we are going to be the third biggest economy. Now, with the Prime Minister of India declaring from the Red Fort in 15th of August, he has laid a way forward for India becoming a developed nation within next 25 years. So, having said that, the already in the pipeline, the projection for the real estate itself is that in next 3 to 7 years, by 2030, we are going to be, I mean, the real estate companies, real estate component part of it is going to be contributing 13 to 15% of India's GDP, which itself is a huge figure. I'm not talking about the infrastructure and other things. So I remember when I was working in Dubai back in 2004, 5, 6, when it was at the peak, world's 35% crane was in Dubai. It was only single city. And India, we have multiple cities. We have planned for 100 smart cities. Then the entire world has to be here in terms of bringing in their machinery and the manpower. But simultaneously, if we do not develop our manpower, it will be. Although there is a policy from the government to put in our people to the maximum possible extent, but if we do not improve within a short span of time, I think we have to cut it across and bring in people from outside. And as regard quality is concerned, the attitude is the main issue. As you said, chalta hai attitude. So that has to be actually cut down. I mean, there need to be people like Sridhar, because unless otherwise it comes from your heart, you are passionate about doing what you are doing, it is not going to be delivered. And unfortunately, the construction companies and the whole of the real estate industry in India and the construction industry and the project division is, I'm sorry to say, it's chalta hai attitude still. We need to bring in some leaders who would not be compromising and will be able to take decisions to throw out anybody and everybody out of the job any point in time. Recently, some 10 days back, there was a collapse of a pillar, metro pillar in Bangalore, under construction. 2 people died, one lady and a kid. So, as you said, how can we live like this? Why there is no accountability? How somebody is not sacked and put behind the bars to teach them a lesson? So, what will be your inputs in regard to this?
No, I think, Pankaj, you need to see the situation that we are going to encounter in the country. Let's take one of the cities of India. We have a massive slumification of cities. That is the reality in India, and therefore massive de-slumification have to happen, where low cost affordable housing and most imminently prefabricated housing technology needs to come in to be able to de-slumify Indian cities. Then the second aspect here is that every city has got a completely ravaged water body. The rivers are filled with chemical black, water, which is completely poisoning the lives of people who live in the city. So every city has to undergo a river rejuvenation initiative to be able to clean up the water. Otherwise, those cities will die. And traditionally, cities have been set up through civilization across or alongside vibrant rivers. But those vibrant rivers are today black water rivers. So we have to clean up the rivers in our cities. The third is the urban transportation challenges. Today, Delhi has more cars than Calcutta, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai put together. And of course, Delhi does have 14% of the city as roads, and that's a luxury that we have in Delhi. But even that 14% is not able to accommodate the number of cars that are getting injected into the cities. So how do we plan for green public transportation solutions, which is going to take the cars off the roads and bring public effective, efficient, and accurate, predictable, credible public transportation solutions to solve our transportation challenges? How do we ensure that we uh, expand the limits of our cities so that people can live in the neighboring areas around the cities? How do we formalize the NCR, which has been in the works for the last 20-25 years? And we do need to bring in Faridabad, we need to bring in Noida, Gurgaon, all the other neighboring cities into the framework of NCR so that it becomes a integrated, seamlessly continuous kind of city process. So these are some of the challenges that we will be encountering, and we need to really focus our minds on these brownfield cities, because you have not heard of a single greenfield city in India.
No, not yet.
50% population of India that is going to come into the current brownfield cities is the next challenge that I think that India has to really encounter. And that has to happen with effective city planning, getting some of the old city master plans to be updated to relevant, current, and practical plans of tomorrow, not just today. It has to be completely re-architected, the whole master plan of every city, and the road network has to be really looked at. Public transportation systems have to come in. The rivers have to be cleaned. The slums have to be de-slumified. The urban housing challenges have to be fulfilled through real estate. The real estate industry today suffers from a massive credibility crisis. They are not
Yes.
able to deliver, and yet they keep on getting more bookings. So, for example, I would propose that no builder should get the sanction of a new plot until they're able to show that the old project that they have executed has been completed and registered by all the buyers. Things like that. If we don't slow it down, and if we allow this to grow where they are over leveraging their loan limits, they are taking money from Peter to pay Paul, they are moving the money from one project to the other, ignoring the old project, and getting the buyers to suffer in silence. If you get a road contractor to keep getting contracts of roads where they have not finished the earlier project, so bring in conditions like, unless you show that you have completed the old project, you are not going to be bidding for the new project. Unless these checks and balances come into our overall planning process, we will keep on having all these bubbles that are ultimately going to burst and end up with project delivery disasters rather than giving the outcomes of projects in the country.
Thank you so much. But then, as you said, regarding the greenfield projects, Singapore is the best example, I think, in this regard. Singapore is the only country where they have planned it in such a way that, I mean, car license they have limited to very few people.
Of course.
The CEOs of the companies, they travel by metros, and they have made it so greenfield project. So Singapore also, many Indians are there. I mean, if we can be number one in the IT, why not in other sectors? We are intelligent, we are hardworking. Only thing we have to focus, shift our thought process and think something of global standards in taking this infrastructure real estate part of it. The thought process is also not to bring in the best people. Just चलता है जैसे भी चल रहा है चलाइए. This has to go off. Just to share with you one example, Dubai. It was a barren land. It was a desert. 35 years down the line, Dubai has come up in front of us actually. The ruler of Dubai, what he says, the future belongs to those who can think, who can design, and who can execute it. He's doing it. He wants everything world class. And if something can be done today, it has to be done today. By the way, you know, Dubai doesn't have oil. Abu Dhabi is having oil. So they have made a city, a world class city. Even if you go to USA or UK and you go to Dubai, USA, UK is 10 years behind Dubai, and the type of structures they have brought in. So I think it is all about the thought process. If we think now of late, we have a prime minister who is thinking, I mean, and trying to show some way forward. And maybe looks like the world is looking at India to come and invest, because other part of the world is developed that way also. It is a cyclic process. So I think going forward, it is our century. And from all corners, all angles, we need to try and help how we can help this particular project development company, real estate company, construction company, with many more interviews like this, and bring in some experts and help the industry grow forward.
No, we have a leader of the country who is definitely visionary, who is extremely confident of India's capabilities that we will be a emerged economy in the next 25 years, and he has laid out a roadmap. What is most important is that his vision needs to be translated and percolated down the line to the last person. That is very important. It is enough, not enough to have just a one person with a vision. It has to have the entire country execute that vision in unison. And I think that's where we all have to rally all our troops together, put all our shoulders on the wheel to ensure that we leave a country for our next generation that they will be proud of and say that yes, the Sone ki Chidiya that India indeed was at one point of time is indeed back where it belongs.
Last question. What, according to you, is more effective in creating ethical environment, personal power or positional power? Is it the same at every, scenario or scene?
No, I think the answer to this question is that, leading by example, you have to create the mahal where you are able to take the front foot and show to the rest of the teams that you lead that you are going to conduct yourself in an ethical, moral way, and you will stand by your responsibility. If each one of us, as leaders in our own initiatives, take that step, then I'm sure we will have followers and we will create a mahal. We have to create a mahal or an environment of the right and not always look for corners that we can beat, cheat, and get there is no shortcut to success, as I say. Only hard work pays. And these are very, very ethically true in our day to day lives. And if all of us can practice that, I'm sure around us the mahal will be created. And that's what will change the ways in which we conduct ourselves in this country.
Thank you so much for your time. Just one-liner statement for the industry going forward, for the developers, for the project owners, for everybody to, supplement my subject, delivery of projects on time with world-class quality.
Just one word is that build what you believe that you can use yourself. I think if that feeling comes that I'm building a flat, an apartment that I can come and stay in, I'm building a road that I can drive my car on. If you can do that as a developer, India will be a different country.
Thank you so much for your insightful message. Thank you once again. It was
Thank you, Pankaj.
a place to have you on board. Thank you. Signing off for now.